if it was illegal to say stupid things into a microphone.
Why must you be so stupid?
These guys would be doing life without parole.
Hey, everybody, we're back from prison.
Why do we keep encouraging this kind of behavior? It's the Breaking the Ice podcast with Josh Dolan.
You know, we could, go to jail for this.
Along with Mike Shue and Isaiah Moskahana Mana Blitz Boskowitz, whatever the hell his name is.
So, did you guys finish the Comedy Store?
Oh God, Josh has watched it twice, 3 times. I have watched it in full, and it's. How far are you along?
I got 1 episode left.
All right, so you're past the point where Tom was the guy who headed up the union, if you will, to go on strike.
Right? Yeah.
Just such a. Tell me you didn't love that thing. That thing was so good.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what the last episode. But I'm now completely obsessed and fascinated with Mitzi Shore.
Right.
And why her? Why the maker gave her? It's like, why did God give Clive Davis or Ahmet Ertegun the golden ears? You know,
because she was in the right place at the right time. And unless I'm wrong here, Josh, you're the historian. She was married to a guy, and all she wanted in the divorce was that place. And then I'm
not talking about running the store. I'm talking about where and how did she figure out how someone would do,
especially not being a comedian herself.
Right.
True.
That's the thing.
True.
It's
True.
so that's my question. I know how she got the store and stuff. And thank God she did, because now I'm trying to imagine
if she didn't,
what the world, literally the popular culture and entertainment would be like now if she was never born.
Yeah.
Right. So you wouldn't have people like Richard Pryor or David Letterman, or they'd be different people.
Or
right?
It would be.
Or Robin Williams.
Right.
They would have gathered. They would have gathered at different places. It's those moment in times where that place was available and they all went there. Now, certainly other places opened, but wow, wasn't that? Now, what were the years, Josh? You know better than I. When it really went, it stopped and went downhill bad.
That was
90s.
Yeah, that was all the 90s, almost right up until when I went out there. When I was in Los Angeles, that's when it started to turn back around. Because when I went out there, the Laugh Factory was the hot spot. That was if you're a comedian and you want to make it, you go to the Laugh Factory. And so I think it was right up until 2011. 2011, 2012 is kind of when it made a comeback. And then it kind of had a second golden age, or a second amazing era. And then COVID screwed that all up. So now we're back to the 90s.
Almost
my obsession is how her ability to spot something.
Right.
What did she look for? That's what I want to know. That's what, and maybe we can ask Tom.
Well, it's almost got to be like a Johnny Carson or a David Letterman or someone like that or a Lauren Michaels that has that smell that goes, yep, you are that. Or it's
that's true.
Go back to radio. A music director in the day, long before almost even our time, that could hear it and go,
right.
Yeah. That riff right there that John Paul Jones did or someone did in Zeppelin turns into a magical thing.
Right. But she didn't have a team. But we can ask this guy. This guy might know a thing or two about the Comedy Store.
Maybe.
How's it going, Mr. Dreesen?
Hi, Mr. Dreesen. How are you, sir?
What's going on, guys? I'm so glad you're out of prison. I heard that you guys got bailed out, and that's why I wanted to do the show.
I'm still in prison. I only have 30 minutes.
Well, thank you for joining us again. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Oh, I had a lot of fun last time. I really did. I had a real good time.
I can't believe it's been 2 years already.
Yeah, it seems like 7 and 8 years. It didn't seem like just 2.
These last 2 years don't really. It's weird. I'm not going to say it doesn't count, but it's just a little blurry. And Mr. Dreesen, I didn't get a chance to meet you, but it's an honor, man. And I tell you what, I just finished up watching that Comedy Store documentary, and wow. It was already wow, and now it's even more wow. So that was pretty cool, that documentary.
It was a bit emotional for me because if you, I don't know if you know or not, or if you read the book, but I had not performed there in over 40 years, ever since the strike. I gave my word to this young comedian who later committed suicide, Steve Levetkin. He was so concerned because he was calling in for spots after the strike and he wasn't getting on. And he said, I don't want you to leave the group, Tom, because I had said goodbye to everybody. I was going on the road again. And he pleaded with me, don't leave the group. I said, look, he said, if you leave the group, we won't have the power and she won't give us times. I said, it's in the contract that she can't retaliate against anyone who walked the picket line. It was in our contract. He said, but I called in 3 weeks in a row and I didn't get any times. And it was really forlorn. And I said to him, Steve, and I was in a hurry, I had to catch a plane. I said, Steve, I promise you, I won't go back till you go back. And he was all nervous. And I got my hands on his shoulders. I said, Steve, look at me. I won't go back till you go back. Okay? And okay, he called in for times the next week. And as you know the story, he didn't get any times and he went and committed suicide. He went on top of the Continental Hyatt House next door to the Comedy Store and he wrote a suicide note. My name is Steve Levetkin. I used to work at the Comedy Store. And he dove off the roof and landed, short of the Comedy Store on the ramp there on the drive to the parking lot. And it just, after that, it just so disgusted me. This whole thing was about paying comedians that I just had it. I said, I'm never going back to that place again. I'm so sorry I even got involved in this thing. But 40 years go by. Mike Binder contacts me and Peter Shore, Mitzi's son, who I like very much. I respect him a great deal. They said, would you come back? We're doing a documentary. And would you come back and talk about it? And so they sent a limousine for me and, all that kind of stuff. And then Mike Binder actually took me over there with a camera crew, and I went on stage and I also did the interview with him,
Well, it's, how do you feel about what I watched the documentary also on what Buddy Hackett said on the Tonight Show? They showed him saying, well, they shouldn't be concerned about money. They should be grateful that they have a place to work on their craft.
I couldn't agree with them more, except for the part about the money. That, I used to say that you want to break in new material, do it at Caesar's Palace when you're working. Don't do it at the Comedy Store. It could kill your career. You know who was in that audience every night? These are talent coordinators in that audience every night at the Comedy Store. The Johnny Carson Show, Merv Griffin, Mike Douglas, Dinah Shore, Midnight Special, Rock Concert, Soul Train, American Bandstand. Canada were sending talent coordinators down for shows they had up there. Every night, someone was getting discovered. You were going on stage with polished acts for the most part. But when Buddy started out, they worked the Catskills and stuff, and they made money. I agree that you need a place to develop. Look, where I'm going on this weekend? I'm going over to Laugh Factory this weekend, and I'm going over to the Comedy Store. I still work on new material all the time. You don't get the kind of money that you get when you work Vegas and stuff. But he's right. You're always, comedians are in a constant state of development. But when you're charging money at the door to see these comedians, I only thought it was fair. And so did Bob Hope and Richard Pryor and a lot of other comedians who supported us, But Buddy was right. He had his own opinion of it. He said she put up the money. She actually won the Comedy Store in a divorce. And you're right. The guy who opens up a comedy club, he puts up all the money, puts up the risk, But once he gets his money back, at least, don't you think he should pay the talent?
I was just telling these guys, we were just talking about the documentary. I am now so curious and so obsessed with Mitzi Shore. And I'm trying to, my question is like, and it's hard to answer this question because I think it's like the same, question as, well, how did Pavarotti get such a great voice? And how is, Freddie Mercury from Queen such a great frontman? And it's something you can't, how did she get this ability to spot talent? Because it seems like I'm trying to imagine a world where she was never born and trying to imagine what entertainment would be like today. And it just touches everything, from the Comedy Store, movies, television, talk shows, podcasting. Everything. And I'm trying to imagine what the world would be like without that. What is it that she had? What was she looking for?
Well, let me start with two things. Bud Friedman started the first, where comedians go on stage for free in New York. Only he did singer, comic. When Mitzi was married to a comedian, Sammy Shore, for years. She knew the world of stand-up comedy. Sammy bought the Comedy Store, and he had comics stop in there and do 45 minutes or an hour. You get up and do whatever you want. It was one of those joints where you come and have food, sandwiches, and anybody get up on stage and do a monologue. But it'd go on for 45 minutes or an hour. When Mitzi won the Comedy Store and divorced, which she did brilliantly, she came up with a Ford assembly line type thing, a comic every 15 minutes. If you would have told me when I first started out, there were no comedy clubs when I first started out. We worked all nightclubs. If you would have told me, I want you to go on stage tonight with 5 other comedians, I'd say, are you out of your mind? What do I want 5, 10 comedians for?
Right.
We only got one comedian on this show, But Mitzi streamlined into like a Ford assembly line, and it worked. She was smart enough to, every 15 minutes, boom, another comedian, first show, second show, and even a late show. So she was really good at that. Now, you say, could she spot talent? Every comedy club owner in America thinks they know what comedy is. And the truth is, they're full of shit. Can I say that? I'm sorry.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, this is a podcast, Tom. Go off.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they know what's funny to them because comedy's subjective. They know what they think might work in their club. But, Bud Friedman spotted Andy Kaufman when no one thought this guy could be anything. But Bud Friedman, it tickled his funny bone, and Kaufman became a star later on, Mitzi knew what worked at her club. You saw the documentary. Louis C.K. was doing specials, was selling out all across the land, but he wanted to work at the Comedy Store because that's had such tradition. He went up on an open mic night, was supposed to do like 5 minutes. She looked at him. He didn't even get the first line out. She said, turn the light off. I don't like that. So yep. You say what makes her spot? While a lot of great comedians developed, it was timing too. I'm not going to say Mitzi didn't do good things. First of all, I liked Mitzi a lot. She was very shy. I would go on radio shows promoting the Comedy Store, and I'd take her with me because she was shy. So with me there, I could keep the conversation going and everything. And so I liked Mitzi a lot. I really did. And I'm sorry that we had this rift that I ended up representing the comedians, much to my dismay sometimes. And that she was the opposition. I thought I could talk her into paying the comedians $5 a set. I thought, I told you about it from the book. I went to her one night during the midst of all this, everybody talking about going on strike. I said, Mitzi, you're charging $5 at the door, charge $6. Let the comedians have that $1. If 200 people show up, they split $200. If 400 people show up, they split $400. And that's 20 comedians, I thought that's the answer. She said, no. And I said, no. She said, they don't deserve to be paid. Now, I was numb because I thought it was about money. If it was about money, we resolved that issue. It was about control. And she didn't want to give up that control. Anyhow, she was in many ways kind to comedians. They stayed at her home. If they were short of money, she'd give them money, but she didn't want to pay them at the door. And that was hard for me to understand, and I was making 6 figures. I wasn't like I needed the money. I was touring with Sammy Davis Jr. You guys know the story. I had 6 weeks of Sammy. I had like over $50,000 worth of work, and those days that I turned down to walk the picket line. And Sammy understood, and when the strike was over, he put me back on the road with him.
Well, you were representing family. You were, as far as you were concerned, this was family, and we need to all stick together. Do you think did the relationship ever mend past that with you and Mitzi?
I never went back to the Comedy Store, but Argus Hamilton, a while before she passed away, of course, got her on the phone with me, and God bless him, because he's a good friend too, even though he was on the other side, but he adored her. And so we talked, and I told her that I feel real bad that I thought I was doing the right thing. And of course you thought you were doing the right thing, but it's all history now and it's over, a lot of, it's been 45 years. No. What is 79? It's been 40 years ago or more. And there's still rifts between those who crossed the picket line and those who didn't,
Wow.
Was Argus Hamilton the guy who hit Jay Leno? Well, supposedly hit Jay Leno with his car.
No.
Who did that? That was great. That part was great.
Yeah, Argus Hamilton was the sweetest, kindest guy in the world, and still is, and still at the Comedy Store, emceeing most nights in the main room. He's a wonderful guy and a brilliant writer, by the way. It wasn't him at all. He would never. It was Biff Maynard.
Okay, all right.
If Biff Maynard wasn't at the Comedy Store, you might have been robbing a liquor store. You know? He was a tough guy, and I think there was rumor he did some time at one time, but he was a tough guy and a hothead, you know.
Is he still with us? I just Googled Biff Maynard and he looks like a character.
No, he passed away.
Did he?
But before he died, he admitted that they threw a Molotov cocktail on top of the improvisation and burned it down.
Jesus.
Oh my God.
Wow.
And the reason for that is because we had a spy inside the Comedy Store, a waitress who was just a sweetheart. She would, when Mitzi would have a meeting with her loyalists, when we went on strike, 18 guys and one girl crossed the picket line, or the strike would have been over in 24 hours. It would have never lasted, but it prolonged it. They weren't big names or anything like that, but they were able to fill the slots, you know. And we had a spy inside whenever she had a meeting, and so she told us that at one of the meetings that Mitzi said the comedians are talking about going on strike, and in the back, Biff Maynard said comedians won't go on a strike; they need a place to work. Mitzi said, well, maybe they'll go over to the improvisation. And Ali Joe Prater said, what if there was no improvisation?
Oh, jeez.
Wow.
They burned down the back of the club, but the front stayed intact. So Bud Friedman came to me and said, Tommy, if you guys, I want to rebuild my club. I can't shut down. If you guys strike me, I can never do this. I said, but we don't want to go on strike. No one wants to go on strike. You know, we just want the comics to be paid. Will you sign a memo that when you rebuild, we'll work your place. When you rebuild, you'll sit down and negotiate a fair price. He said, absolutely. And he signed the memo. And so when we were out on the picket line, we would tell people, please don't honor this, the Comedy Store, but we are working at the Improv because he's agreeing to pay us at some point.
Now, it seemed like it was a big thing during the strike that everybody was waiting to see what David Letterman was going to do. Was he like on the fence whether or not he was going to go on strike?
No, he was always with us. He, you know, the first night he guest hosted the Tonight Show, I was with him. He left there after his first time. He was walking, and Fred DeCordova said, Dave, we're having a post meeting. He said, I can't. I'm walking the picket line tonight. And he walked over the picket line. And,
wow.
And that night, according to Argus and some of the guys on the other side, that Mitzi looked out the window and saw Dave on the picket line with us, and it broke her heart because she loved Dave Letterman. And
right.
She thought the world of him. But when she talked to him, he said, Mitzi, these are my friends. These are the people, you know, and I got to stand with them, you know.
I do have to say, though, in that documentary, David Letterman's starting to look a little bit like Fidel Castro. That's an aggressive.
I told him the other day, we had dinner the other night. He was here. And with that beard, I said, are you getting it? Are you Santa Claus at Macy's this year?
He could be.
It's so funny. You think 32 years on the air, now you're off the air, and you want to go around the street and be like a normal person where people won't mob you, take pictures with them. So what do? You grow a beard down here so everybody knows who you are.
Right. Yeah. Right.
You put a spotlight on yourself.
He still wants the attention, even though he doesn't want to admit it. Come on.
I don't know about that.
Very shy guy, and I got to tell you a funny story. I don't think I told you guys this. Well, but he called me a while back and said, Tom, every time you do an interview or I do an interview, and people say, how did we meet? We always tell the same story, that you came off stage at the Comedy Store. It was my first night out in LA. I was in the lot up in front, and you came off stage and I complimented you on your set, and we started a conversation and became friends. I said, yeah. He said, well, it's boring. I said, but it's he said, I don't care, it's a boring story. From now on, you tell people, and I'm going to tell people, that you were on stage at the Comedy Store. You came off stage. I had stolen some of your material, and you beat the shit out of me in the parking lot. Now, why am I going to tell a story like that? He said, because it's a funnier story. I said, you got 32 million fans. They'll be chasing me through airports. Now, 2 weeks go by. He calls me. He said, do you know the governor of Illinois? I said, I met him, but I don't know him. He said, well, my wife, Regina, has a friend in Chicago, in Illinois, whose son is autistic, a grown man. And these autistic adults there's some property that they plant corn, beans, and tomatoes. And when it comes into fruition, they give it to the homeless. And supposedly the state may take that property away. And I'd like to talk to the governor. I said, I know the president of the Senate, John Cullerton. I said, let me call him. I called John and tell John. John said, oh, tell Dave, don't worry about that. We're taking care of that. It's going to be okay. I said, and he was telling me about some statute. I said, John, could Dave call you and you tell him this because you explained it better? He said, sure, I'll give him my number. And I said, oh, by the way, John, when you help Dave, tell him the only reason you're helping him is because Dreesen beat the shit out of him in the parking lot of the comedy store. He said, okay. Now, 10 minutes later, my phone rings. I go, hello. He said, didn't I tell you that's a better story? I told you that's a better story.
Exactly. It's all about getting people's attention, not necessarily the truth. Who was that person in the documentary that had the riff with Joe Rogan? The same thing, because he was upset about a comedian stealing
Carlos
material.
Mencia.
Yeah, Mencia.
Yeah. And he was banned from the Comedy Store for a while, or didn't come back, whatever it was. But look what he's done. What a wonderful thing he's done. You know, God bless him.
Now,
So
Tom, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Drew.
No, go ahead, Josh. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, going back to when you said when you first started out, there were no comedy clubs. What made you get into comedy? Like, what did you look at and you're like, that, I want to do that? Because when I first started, it was because my dad was always dragging me to comedy clubs. There was the Comedy Central. But if there was no comedy clubs or comedy happening, like around, what made you want to get into it?
Well, first of all, let me digress on your part. You didn't tell the truth. The truth is, you were watching the Tonight Show one night. You saw me and you said, shit, if he can do that, I can do that. If he can get that shit, I can do it. So I was influenced. I could do that. You know what got me into it? I never, ever thought I'd be a stand-up comedian. It was the furthest thing from my mind. I was in a civic group called the JCs, Junior Chamber of Commerce. And it was young men of action from ages 18 to 36 in communities all over the United States and 22 foreign countries. And you attack the problems of the community. And by doing that, they have leadership training programs, you know, and they teach you how to form a committee, how to serve on a committee, how to chair a committee, subcommittees, how to Robert's Rules of Order, how to conduct meetings, and speak up programs, how to speak in front of an audience. And so I joined that group. I got very active, handling the problems of the community, because I had been a delinquent youth. You know, I had 8 brothers and sisters, lived in a shack, grew up poor, you know, and as a kid, got in some problems, street fights and stuff like that. At age 16, quit high school, and then I went in the Navy for 4 years, got a high school diploma, came back to junior college. But I wanted to help kids like me that grew up on the poor side of the town, you know. So I wrote a drug education program teaching grade school children the ills of drug abuse. I had never been a drug user, but that was the #1 problem in our community as it is today. And I based it a lot on humor, getting the kids laughing, playing music, and helping me with this project was a young Black man who graduated from Norfolk State College. E.I. DuPont recruited him into Chicago as a marketing rep. He joined the JCs, and the night I proposed a program, he wanted to work with me. Anyhow, long story short, we worked on it, went into the classrooms, and the children, you know, they adapted to us right away because we were talking to Black and white children. And so Tim and I, a young black guy, a young white guy, we played off of one another, got the kids laughing, played music, and we planted the seeds of the ills of drug abuse. The program became very successful. In 50 states and in 22 foreign countries, JCs use it as a model program through their publications. And one day, leaving the classroom, a little eighth grade girl said, "You guys are funny. You ought to become a comedy team." And the thought of a Black-white comedy team intrigued us. No one had ever done that before. So we became America's first Black and white comedy team. Tim Reed later became Venus Flytrap on WKRP Cincinnati. Yes. He was on a show called Sister, Sister. But we never been on stage before, neither one of us. There were no comedy clubs. So how could we work? We went to a jazz club one night and begged the owner, could we go on after the jazz group takes a break? And we went on and we bombed, you know.
You're in a jazz club.
we went 100 miles an hour. We didn't care whether there were laughs. We wanted to remember our lines. So hi, we're the comedy team at Tim Tom. He's Tim, I'm Tom. He's Tim, different. We just got in, we drove, you know, we were talking 100 miles an hour. We finished a 20-minute set in about 4.5 minutes, you know. We bolted off stage and we got the owner in the corner. How'd we do? What'd you think when he said?
Awful.
He said, I don't know how you did. We never gave you a chance to laugh. come back tomorrow and slow down. We went back the next night and got big laughs. And it was like an epiphany for me. I was hooked. I said, oh my God, this is what I want to do. I think I told you guys this story before, but I wandered aimlessly after I came out of service. I had a wife and 3 kids going from job to job. And I actually was praying. I'm in the bar at 2:00 in the morning with all my buddies, and I'm saying, I don't belong here, but I didn't know where I belonged. And I prayed. I actually went to the church when I was an altar boy. I went to the same church, and I prayed. I said, God, what is it I'm supposed to be doing? Because this can't be it. And then when I got that first laugh with Tim and Tom that night, it was something I had written. It was like one of those old B movies where the dark clouds open up and the sun bursts through, and my whole being went, oh, yeah. Oh, shit, this is what I want to do. I want to be a comedian. I found it. And the next day, I couldn't sleep that night. It was a Friday night. Oh, shoot.
Hello, Tom Dreesen hotline. We'd love to do the show. Absolutely. Listen, I was just on his website. I just called that number, Tom. I want to book you for a show. Are you available?
It's probably my agent. It's the first time he's called in 5 years, and it just so happens I'm in the middle of something, and I got to.
And he keeps calling you. He's like, Tom, it's the first gig since COVID. Let's go.
He's probably like, Tom, don't do the podcast, Tom. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Yes, if you run across Breaking the Ice, don't do it. It's awful. Did you ever get to do, you do, obviously the Tim and Tom show sounds amazing, and I'd love to see footage of that. Did you ever get any appearances? And I would think I would know this on WKRP in Cincinnati at all.
Yeah, I did. I went on as I was a reporter from an all-black magazine.
Okay.
Only white guy there. And I'm doing Venus Flytrap, who was the only black guy on an all-white thing. And I started pouring my character, poured my heart out to him. Do you know what it's like being at one place where everybody's one color and you're another, and all that kind of stuff, you know? But the end of that last story, that at that moment I knew that that's what I wanted to be, a stand-up comedian. And
nice.
and I got up the next morning. It was a Friday night. I got up the next morning. I went down to the church, and it was no one in church. It was a Saturday morning. And I prayed. I said, God, now I know. Now I know what I want. If you let me make my living as a comedian, I promise I'll do charities. I promise I'll give back. I was making all these promises, you know. And that was 51 years ago. On my 50th anniversary of that date, that was September 1969, I went back to that church in Harvey, Illinois, Ascension Church, and I gave the sermon on the power of prayer. And I told the audience, the congregation, I knelt right there, and I prayed for, and all my dreams have come true. All my prayers were answered, you know. And it's this is my 51st year in show business. It's just been it's a great journey, ups and downs and rejections and knockdowns and all sorts of things. But it's still the greatest profession on the planet. And the answer to your question, a short answer, there were no comedy clubs in those days. So we worked all black clubs in the North and the South, what they affectionately call the Chitlin Circuit, black-owned, black-operated nightclubs. And we worked all white nightclubs too. We ended up on the Playboy circuit for years. So we'd go places where I was the only white guy within 5 miles, and we'd go places where Tim was the only black guy, you know. And we did 11, anywhere there was racial tension, we performed. We did 11 prisons in 1 year. We did the county jail in Chicago 3 times in 1 year. We high schools, colleges, wherever there was racial tension, we would go there and not preach. We just made them laugh. You
know, it's amazing that, I mean, it's first of all amazing at that time in 1969, 1970, that you guys were a black and white duo, and it's amazing you were going to places where there was racial tension. That's like I can't even imagine the things people would say to you guys. You know, just because you were working together, you know, it was just because at that time that just wasn't something that was never done before. 1, never done before. 2, you just didn't do it at that time.
Well, not only that, at that time, if you look up that history, the Civil Rights Act was passed just a few years before that. Martin Luther King was assassinated. Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. There were race riots in every major city in Chicago, including the neighborhood I grew up in, one of the largest riots in the country, in the south side of Chicago in Harvey, Illinois, where I grew up at. There were large race riots all over. Students were protesting the Vietnam War across the nation. America was in turmoil, in utter turmoil. And that was the backdrop. In the midst of all this were Tim and Tom. Now, all over the country, and it's ironic that 51 years later, we're still talking the same shit.
Right.
Yeah.
We
I was
need
going to say nothing's changed.
Yeah.
They were saying we need better race relations. You know, need more dialogue between the races. We need more race relations. Well, to have race relations, you need to have race relations. Tim Reed and I were having race relations on stage. You know, we were having the dialogue America wasn't having. We were poking fun at every stereotype out there. And when they saw us up there having a lot of fun, I can't tell you how many times in that 6 years with Tim Reed, that we'd go to a college or a high school or something. A young black kid would come up and say, you know, I got a white friend that I want to reach out to, but if I do, the brother's going to wear me out. But after watching you and Tommy tonight, they'd say to Tim, I'm going to reach out to my white friend. Then a white kid would come up and say, you know, I got a black friend that I really like, and I want to reach out to him, but the white guy's going to call me names. But after watching you and Tim, I'm going to reach out to my black friend. More times than you'll ever know, we heard that, you know, around the night. And to this day, that means more to me. Sounds corny and all that bullshit, but it means more to me than any possible award you could ever give us. You know,
You could resurrect now. I mean, when was the last time you were with Tim?
We get together all the time. They're doing a documentary on my life now from my book, which we haven't plugged, by the way, guys. Still,
hold on. You know you're old when there's a documentary about your life. God bless you.
Oh yeah, but here now I'm gonna choose another view here if I can choose another background. See,
do it.
Choose this background. Where virtual background? I'll do something here and screw this up, and I won't be on here anymore. Okay,
there is no air. This is the internet. We can do whatever we want.
Anyhow,
the reason I was asking about last time you got together. I mean, look at this format. Look at how stuff is delivered now. Have you and Tim thought about getting together and doing a podcast, or just like talk and just you're somewhere, he's somewhere, you just get on like this and just do it and just keep on talking about the race relations that you're talking about? I think that would be very meaningful.
Well, you know, yes and no. I mean, Tim is busy. He flies overseas to Europe and Nigeria and Ethiopia. He's always doing these lectures and stuff like that. And he's directing and he's acting. And then I've got a one-man show called The Man Who Made Sinatra Laugh, a 90-minute show that I do in theaters around the country. And plus, you know, we're doing this documentary on my book, I'm saying, and in that documentary, there's a huge segment of Tim and Tom. And then there's people that Netflix are supposedly interested in doing 6 one-hour miniseries of Tim Reed, a young guy playing me and a young guy playing Tim.
I would love to see that.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
You know, again, we did things, they would run us out of town on a rail today.
No, but you know what? But good. Put it out there. It's almost like you say that, but then someone like Seth MacFarlane still exists doing Family Guy because it's put in a light of, well, it's your comedy, he's comedy. I'm surprised Family Guy. I love Family Guy. They cover everything. They pick on everybody. It's not like it's meant to insult. It's comedy. I'm being sarcastic. I'm joking. Like having someone like you and a Tim, not to take up more of both of your times doing these things, but like you've seen some shit. You've seen some shit in the toughest times. Like times are tough now, but now you take away social media and 24-hour news cycles, and you guys were going into fucking places that were just like, oh, this is red hot. But you went in, you did it, and we're like, we got to go before we get killed.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes we almost got killed. On the 4th time on stage, a guy put a lit cigarette out in Tim's face.
Oh,
and tried to keep the Jesus out of me. He was a big former football player that played in the NFL, and I boxed him when I was in the service, but he outweighed me by 100 pounds, and
you'd have gotten killed.
And I got brutalized. We both got hurt pretty bad that night. But anyhow, that was our 4th time on stage. And we were getting in the car that night, and I felt like my chest caved in where the guy was trying to crush me, and Tim was scarred up, and Tim looked at me. We got in the car, and he said, "Welcome to show business." You know.
Well, welcome to show business. And the things you were doing at the time were not just Caucasian males getting up doing whatever. You were like, guess what? This shit's not like that. It is black and white. There are multiple races and various things. And, you know, I can only imagine how people would react today. But guess what? Fuck them. Just like Joe Rogan says, just like all these comedians say, just like people say, it's Bill Burr does it all the time. It's in the Mike. It's not Mike. I'm sorry. It's in the documentary. Sorry. These are jokes. These are jokes. I'm trying to make you laugh.
You know what? And that you have to explain that
I know.
actually pisses me off. The
I know.
politically correct police are the worst thing that ever happened to this country.
You're right.
We have a Second Amendment. Thousands of men and women died. So we have the right to say whatever we want to say in this country. We can't say fire in a crowded theater, but we have that right. Thousands of men and women died for that right, the Second Amendment.
Right.
So when you stifle, when you tell somebody what they must say, you know, who are the, first of all, let me start out. Who are these people? You know, we don't, do they have a corporation? They have a board. Can we go before their audience and argue our point? No. Who are, they're people who sit in basements and type on, oh, I don't like what you say, or I'm going to boycott that product that is on your show.
Keyboard warriors.
The stand-up comedian is the last bastion of freedom of speech. When you start telling us what we have to say, your next step is to tell us what we have to think. And that's when we become fully blown out communist. And America, to my knowledge, isn't there yet. You're working on it. You're doing the damnedest you can to make us go so far left that we're communists. But as long as there's stand-up comedians like Chappelle, like Jim, like Joe Rogan, you know, like Bill
Burr,
you know, as long as there's comedians like that out there, free speech is gonna last. You know?
That's why I think there would be a place for Tim and Tom revised. It would be fucking refreshing. Because is there any argument? Motherfuckers, look at the screen. Black gentleman, white gentleman. And now we're talking.
Yeah, but you know what they would do? What the left loves to do? They would label me something and they would label him something.
Let them, fuck it. Take the comments off the posts. Just do it.
Yeah. By the way, I don't, at my age, you think I give a shit? You know,
there's the promo right there.
You want to hear the promo? Go to Tom Dreesen Rants on Political Correctness on the internet, and I'll give you a brief of what I'm talking to 4 comedians, and I'm saying just what I said to you. You know, who are these people? We know who the Democrats are, the Republicans are. We know who the Ku Klux Klan is. We know who the Independents are. We know who the Kiwanis, the Moose, the Elks, but we don't know who you are, and we keep apologizing to you, and we don't know who you are. So here's what I have to say to you: kiss my black ass.
You actually were on a very politically correct show back in the day called the Dean Martin Roast.
Yeah. You only knew what happened beside the roast. You know, they had to work clean in those days. You know, the guys had to work clean, but off stage, you know, there were some very funny guys.
What were those after parties like?
You know, where they said anything they wanted to say in those days. But anyhow, you know, going back to the politically correct police, you know, that I want people to look at that on the internet. I tell everybody, go there, because I want somebody to come up to me and say, you can't say that. I'll say, why can't I say that? Well, you said kiss your black ass. I said, yeah. Why you can't say that? I said, because you don't have a black ass. I said, I think I have one. I got a guy down the street that thinks he's a woman. You know, and you say that's okay. I'm okay, that's okay. I think I got a black ass.
What's amazing to me, and I think I mentioned this last time we talked, that since Tim and Tom, there's not a lot of comedy duos, but there hasn't been, I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, there hasn't been an interracial comedy duo since you guys. Is that right?
That speaks volumes, doesn't it? That we were America's first black and white comedy team, and history shows we were the last. That speaks volumes, doesn't it? Now, you're right. There aren't a lot of comedy teams today. When I started out, there were a lot of comedy teams, but there isn't enough money in comedy in the earlier stages to feed. You know, I had a wife and 3 kids. Tim Reed had a wife and 2 kids. We were married guys who had families, and we were struggling to make a living. It was really a hard time, you know. So there aren't a lot of comedy teams out there, but another black and white comedy team, again, in those days, they didn't have social media. You know, the social media today sets out to destroy you. You know,
oh, it's fucking awful.
By the way, if you're opposed, we used to be able to debate our issues, but if you don't think like I think, then we call that misinformation, and we delete you from social media. And by the way, everybody says to me all the time, how are you going to make it today, Tom? I give, as you guys know, I give motivation talks to America, to corporate America, and to universities and stuff. But I have a special one to comedians called The Joy of Stand-Up Comedy and How to Get There. And it's a motivation talk. I talk on 4 subjects: perception, visualization, self-talk, and develop a sense of humor, and to try to motivate the comics. But one of the questions that's always asked of me is, how did you make it in your day? Well, everybody knew in 1975, wherever you went in America, people say, what do you do for a living? You say, I'm a stand-up comedian. The next question out of their mouth was, oh yeah, have you ever been on Johnny Carson? So if you haven't been on Johnny Carson in the eyes of America, you weren't a comedian. So we all had to go, how do we get on Johnny Carson? Had to write material that could make grandma and grandpa, mom and dad, and the kids laugh. You had to write clean material. There was no cable in those days. So that was where you went. 26 million people watched that show every night. One appearance on that show, your career was launched. Freddie Prinze did one appearance, you got a sitcom the next day. I did one appearance, CBS signed me to a development deal, took me out of the unemployment line in one day. So, and I never stopped working. As you guys know, I did 61 appearances on the Tonight Show. So I never stopped working from that date. But today, they ask me how you make it, and it's a social media. Dane Cook got on MySpace and started selling out coliseums, arenas. I mean, 15,000 seaters from MySpace. So if MySpace or Facebook or any of those other social medias, Twitter or TikTok, do not like you, something you said, bingo, you're banished from them.
Well, they're almost, they are in a different way, the paparazzi of the world. So if you love and hate the paparazzi. If you're a star, you love it when they follow you and you love it when they say great things about you. But the second you fuck up and they chase you down, that's part of the deal.
But it's not part necessarily that if you fuck up, it's just if they don't like you, because
true.
Reality is just out the window. Like, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. It's all about how, like, you watch the videos of these comedians where they're like, all of a sudden they said something that the blogger didn't like. All of a sudden it went from telling jokes to making statements. And then they show the video and the whole crowd's laughing. It's just one person in the back with a blog that didn't like it. And then you're on the death row.
Yeah. It's awful. You've gone into this world of, like, I'm just Googling things while we're talking and various things. Tim and Tom come up everywhere, which is great. The closest second is Salt and Pepper, just so you know.
I know that's not even interracial.
I know, but Salt and Pepper. So this is how stupid Google is.
By the way, when Tim and I started out, there was a black guy and a white guy that sang, and they called themselves Salt and Pepper, not Salt and Pepper. But they were called Salt and Pepper, and they were only doing it for like a couple of years. They were singing, they weren't a comedy team,
Maybe that's who it is. No, but the point is, it's all this thing is, when you think about thing being Google or thing being Instagram or TikTok or MySpace or Facebook, it's a headline. And Mike and I and Josh have talked about this with many guests on the show. It's the clickbait. It's the, what's that headline that you're going to see? Boom. Tom said this. Okay. Tom said something at some point in a different context of something, but you grab that one little thing and pin him to the cross because of it. And that's the end of it. Like, that's not even fair anymore. You said earlier, Tom, we'd like to debate. Debate is a healthy back and forth. And then at the end, we either agree or we choose to disagree. That is so far gone.
Well, all we are as comedians is we view the world and we go out and we say, oh, I see that. And you go out and you write a funny bit about it. Now, I'm just trying to make people laugh. There's only one rule in comedy: be funny. It's only rule. There are no rules in comedy. Be funny. Don't put rules on us. Oh yeah, you can be funny, but don't say anything. Watch what I'm doing here. This is what you do to a comedian. You say, come on the show, by the way, and don't say this, and don't say that, and don't say this, and don't say that. You see what I just did? I put you in a box.
Once you can't be funny.
You're no longer a comedian. You're no longer a comedian. And the comedians that allow that to happen, again, we're the last bastion of freedom of speech. We have to just tell them bullshit every time they tell us don't say it. Say I'm and you have to risk, what could happen to you. Again, like I say, at my age, it's easy to say because at my age, you can't scare me anymore. I had my nose broke twice. I mean, I've been knocked down. The title of my book is called Still Standing. I've been a stand-up comedian for over 50 years. So it's a double entendre. But I've also been knocked down, physically knocked down in my life many times and got back up again. And that's what the book is. I'm still standing. You tried everything you could, but I'm still standing.
Talk about that book. Talk about great background. You finally got, that looks good. Talk about the book.
Well, all my comedy career, wherever I went, or even not in part of comedy, if something funny or poignant happened, I'd go back to the room and journal it. And through the years, I collected all these stories. I toured with Tony Orlando and Dawn. I toured with Mac Davis. I toured with Gladys Knight and the Pips. I toured with Natalie Cole. I toured with Smokey Robinson. I toured with a black singing group called the Dallas from my hometown. I toured with Sammy Davis Jr. for 3 years. I toured with Dean Martin, and I toured with Frank Sinatra for 14 years in 45, 50 cities a year. So I collected a lot of funny stories and moments, and I'd keep writing them, and poignant stories. And so I kept logging them and journaling them, and then eventually I had a file like this. And so I decided to write a book about it. Two young guys contacted me and they said, "Hey, we got a book deal. We'd like to write a book about your life." I said, "I've already written it, but you can help me with the narrative." And they did. The book is now on Amazon. It's got over 350 5-star reviews. I'm very proud of the book. It's well written through the help of the other guys with me. And I'm very proud of the book. But it's my journey. It's the Tim and Tom years. It's the poverty as a child, 8 brothers and sisters living in a shack. It's really a book about triumph. And I think every film or every book should make you, when you finish it, say, that lifted me. I can do it too. I had alcoholic parents. I had everything in the world going against me ever becoming a success. And somehow I through the years, I became a success in my endeavor, But and that leads me to a story. I will say to comedians, and I say to you, I'm a success. And other comedians say, "How could you call yourself a success? You started out with David Letterman and Jay Leno. They're two of my good buddies, but you started out with them, and look what they've got. Millions of dollars, and they got all these cars and everything." I said, I never was in competition with Jay Leno or David Letterman. There's a great Hindu proverb that says, "There's nothing noble about being superior to another man. True nobility lies in being superior to your former self." Am I a better friend than I was last year? Am I a better son than I was last year? Am I a better father? Am I a better comedian than I was last year? My only competition in showbiz has always been myself. I listen to my tapes. I still got tape recorders here, that I listen to. How did I do? How can I improve? That's the only competition you have as a comedian, your former self. So,
well, let me ask you that. It may have been the moment you said earlier when people laughed at what you wrote and you knew you wanted to do this. But when did you realize that you like for instance, in the Comedy Store special, Damon Wayans said, "I realized I was a comedian when I was afraid not to bomb." Or I was not afraid to bomb. Like I could go up there. I didn't care if I was bombing or not, or if I had a great night. It didn't matter because I know I would just keep going forward and keep getting better. And then like Joe Rogan said, "I knew I was a comedian when Mitzi Shore said I was funny." And what moment was that for you when you were like, I'm really a comedian now?
Well, when you start out in stand up, as you guys know, you bomb, you do good, you bomb, and you do good, and then you bomb, good, and then pretty soon you did 10 shows in a row. Whoa, you're starting to get consistent. You're a pro in golf or anything else. When you start getting consistent, and I started consistently getting good, then I maybe have 20 strong sets, and then I have one bad night. But by that time, I knew it wasn't always. Al Jolson said, "There's no such thing as a bad audience, just a bad performer." Al Jolson, full of shit. I met many bad audiences in my life.
I'm on your side with that one.
But so my point is, when you get consistent. But one of the things that really, when I really had that I am arrived was that first Tonight Show. Because no matter how much you do, and I had been funny for years off with a comedy team and by myself, but no matter the pressure on that first Tonight Show is enormous. 26 million people watching that show. Agents, producers, direct, all these casting people watch that show. My mother had everybody back in Harvey, Illinois watching the show. If I bomb, I can't even go back home. You're behind that curtain, man. And you're going to walk out in front of an audience and 26 million people. And if it doesn't work, if you ain't got what it takes, there's that song, that One Moment in Time. It's got such a classic lyric in it, but that one moment in time where all of my dreams are a heartbeat away and the answers are all up to me. I'm standing behind that curtain and my dreams are a heartbeat away. When he opens that curtain and I walk out there, all my dreams are right there. and the answers are all up to me. And what good is a break if you're not ready when the break comes? So that when I did that first Tonight Show, they called me back for a second bow. I got 8 applause. I went through the curtain. Johnny called me back. I went back out again, and Johnny gave me that little circle. I mean, I can't tell you what that. I knew that night that I had arrived if I could handle that. And then, of course, years later, I'm opening in front of Sinatra, in front of 20,000 people, and 40,000 in Hawaii. And they didn't come to see me; they came to see him. But you pulled it off. You pulled it off. You got it. I said went all the way around the mulberry bush to say consistency. When you start becoming consistent, that's when you know you've arrived.
Now,
this is a cool. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, how did you end up linking up with Frank Sinatra? Did he see you on the Tonight Show and he was like, yes?
He heard me on the podcast. I think it was he heard me
on this show. Yeah.
I got that tour by being glib at the right time. I was working at Harrah's or Caesars in Lake Tahoe with Smokey Robinson. And Frank was appearing next door at Harrah's. And so I had worked Harrah's many times with Sammy Davis and with different artists. And so I had a whole week with Smokey Robinson. I could have went to see Frank on any night. For some reason, I chose this Wednesday night to go over and see Frank's show. I didn't even change out of my stage clothes. I finished my set and shot over to Harrah's, which is 2 casinos away. I went running into the showroom, and the vice president of Harrah's Hotel was standing out in front of the casino, the front of the showroom, with a heavyset guy with a cigar. And he called me over. He said, "Tommy, come here." I went over. He said, "Tommy, this is Mickey Rudin." Well, I recognized the name. That was Frank Sinatra's lawyer. He said, and a very powerful guy in our business. He said, "Mickey, this is Tom Dreesen. And I think Tom would make a great opening act for Frank Sinatra." And the lawyer got a pained expression on his face, like he heard that a million times. And he winked at the vice president, but I caught the wink. And he looked at me, he said, "Hey, kid, if I gave you a week with Frank, would you want more than 50,000? I said, "Mr. Rudin, put it this way. If you gave me a week with Frank, would you want more than 50,000? Oh, I like this kid. And then a week later, they gave me 1 week with Frank at the Golden Nugget in Atlantic City. And I thought, this is great. I'll get my picture taken with him. I'll hang it in every bar back in Chicago. And the second night I was with him, he and his wife, Barbara, took me out to dinner. And I can remember like it was yesterday. He set his knife and his fork down. And he looked at me. He said, "I like your material and I like your style. I'd like you to do a few of the dates with me if you're interested." And I didn't say, "Let me check my calendar." I said, "Yeah." And it turned into 14 years, 45, 50 cities a year, a friendship. He later in life was like a father to me. I stayed in his home 6 times a year. When he died, I was a pallbearer at his funeral, and I spoke at his funeral. And I miss him every day of my life. He's an amazing, amazing guy to know and be around.
I mean, performing with Frank, that's like possibly one of the biggest entertainers ever. But you've worked with a lot of legendary performers, and I remember the other day or yesterday, whenever it was, I never know what day it is anymore. You were saying that you got to work with Jack Benny too. I mean, that's really
cool. What happened was whenever people say to me, what comedians influenced you? 2 comedians influenced me. One was Jack Benny, and the other was Richard Pryor. 2 totally different comedians. Pryor, I came from a neighborhood like that. I grew up on the streets. I'm a street kid. I don't have a degree from academia, but I got a doctorate from the streets. When Richard was on stage, he was like talking to he's like being on a street corner with all the guys I grew up in. I grew up in a predominantly black neighborhood. I played basketball on an all-black basketball team. I played football. I was a running back on an all-black football team. There's a lot of funny stories about that, but that's the environment I grew up in, shining shoes in bars and stuff. And when Richard spoke, he was talking to my soul. Jack Benny, what I loved about Jack Benny, I think a person is an artist in any endeavor, bartender, truck driver, bricklayer. Whenever you make your work look, one word, effortless. Frank Sinatra made singing look easy. You will be my music. You will be my song. You say, I can do that. No, you can't. He just made it look like you could. Jack Benny made comedy look easy, effortless. He walked out and made it look, it was a conversation, not a presentation. And he made it look easy. That's a true artist. And I wanted to be a comedian like that. I wanted to walk out on stage and make it look easy. Even though no matter what was going on inside me, there's an old bit of philosophy that says, act as if you are and you will be. So I would start to act, even when I was young and nervous and scared of going up like all of us do when we started out. I would act as if I was this confident, effortless comedian. And slowly I became one.
So
talk about another confident person. Listen, I wanted to read this. This is about your book, Still Standing, Tom. This is a quote, and I think you know this is from, guys, see if you know this. Quote, "This is the life story of a street kid who turned the hard times into funny monologues on national television and stages across the country. Whether on stage or just sitting around with him after a round of golf, he never fails to make me laugh. I guarantee you will too." Who said that, Tom?
Some unknown actor. I tried to help his career and said, "You want to put something in my book? It'll help." A guy named Clint Westwood. No, Clint Eastwood.
I think it's Eastwood. Eastwood.
Never heard of him.
Yeah.
Well, that just goes to show, again, the more people that you've been around, you've touched, you've collaborated with. I mean, that he doesn't advance praise. Him and Gary Sinise do this at the beginning of your book. I mean, that's the kind of people that you've touched and the kind of impact you've had on people. How does that feel?
Well, I mean, I'm happy that I have those kind of friends that David Letterman wrote the foreword to the book. The foreword that David wrote is hysterical. He left one line out that I can't repeat, but
you can hear.
No, he's just crazy, but he's my crazy friend. But it touches me. Frank Sinatra introduced me to Clint Eastwood 35 years ago, and we became instant friends. I don't know why. I make him laugh, but
you made him laugh.
Yeah, he's a great friend. But I'll tell you, there's I'm trying to think of some stories I could tell you that I'll tell you. He put me in the movie Trouble with the Curve. He cast me in the film. I had to audition. I had to screen test, but I had a few lines in the film. And what it was, it's Trouble with the Curve. He was a baseball scout, and that he found out he had macular degeneration, his character. And so he, finding that out as a baseball scout, could end his life as a baseball scout. With this knowledge, he goes into the corner bar, and the bartender started, "How are you doing?" He said, "Not today. I'm having a bad day." And my character, I come up and I said, "How about a game of Keno, Gus?" He said, "Not today, Rock." I said, "Oh, come on, one game." He said, "God damn it." I said, "No." No means when somebody tells you no. I said, okay, what crawled up your ass? He said, "Old age." And he walks out of the bar. So we did the scene. But I asked him, I flew in the Georgia with him to do the scene. I said, "Could I do 2 takes?" And Clint never wastes film. If he's got it, he's got it. But I gave him a new punchline. He said, "Let's do it." So I took it on Letterman, and Letterman showed the first clip. And he said, "Oh, that's nice. You did a scene with your buddy." I said, "Yeah, but he felt losing his eyesight wasn't provocative enough for him to be that angry, that he needed something deeper, something more provocative to be angry." So we did a second take. He said, "Okay." And in the second take, he shows it to the audience. I said, "How about a game of Keno, Gus?" He said, "Not today, Rock." I said, "Oh, come on, one game." I said, "No, damn it. No means when somebody tells you no." I said, okay, what crawled up your ass? He said, "I had to watch a David Letterman show last night."
Oh, that's awesome.
He did the line perfectly, and Letterman loved it. The audience loved it.
And then you beat the shit out of him.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
In summation of what you just said, I'm a live performer. I love live performing. When I was growing up, if you said show business, you played a word association game. And you said baseball, I'd say Cubs. You said love, I'd say Mom. You said show business, I said Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. To me, they were what show business was about. That live performing, that exciting live performing. So, and at the end of my life, that Sammy Davis Jr., that Dean Martin, and that Frank Sinatra thought enough of my performance, of my comedy, that I could grace the same stages with them. You can close the lid on me. I never cared of CBS, NBC. I didn't care of movies. I'm a live performer. I've done acting. I've done those other things, but that isn't what my passion is. Live stage, live performance. That those 3 guys thought enough of me, and Smokey Robinson, for years, who was a dear buddy of mine. It's come fly with me. Come on the same stage with me. Shit, that just meant the world to me.
I don't
That's
think
awesome.
we'll ever have like stars like the Rat Pack ever again. Like I miss those guys so much, and I wasn't even alive when they were alive, and I miss them.
Or if we do, they're few and far between. The problem is, again, we go back to that. We go back to that world of oversaturation of opportunities. There's no one singular stage or screen or lens you look at anymore. I mean, anyone can take an iPhone and think they're a star. And even if they're not a star, they're still filling up the water jug to make it like, Jesus Christ, I just want to go see a show. But I think they're there. They're just not, it's few and far between now.
Well,
it's sad.
The thing too is when you saw Frank, Sammy, and Dean on stage, William Morris didn't put that package together. No agent said, "Hey, I got a great idea. Why don't you three guys go perform together?" They went to perform together because they loved one another. They first of all, they loved their business and they knew their business. They paid dues and dues and dues, and they knew how to take command of that stage and they knew how to perform. But most of all, they loved one another, and that showed in their performance that they really liked one another.
And night after night after night after night after night after night on every opportunity. Listen, Tom, that's why we have almost 30 million people looking at this podcast, because we love each other.
What?
And Josh didn't give you the numbers from this morning.
Over 30, did you say 30 million? What?
Over 30 million.
You're calling us the Johnny Carson of podcasts.
In my head, it's 30 million. Frankly, it might just be 3, but I hear I'm just kidding. They built that report. It's so much respect goes out to guys like that, guys like yourself that worked. I'm not saying people don't work these days. I'm not saying that at all. It's just a different thing. It happens
faster. It happens faster because of the digital age, because you can put it right out there. You can put it, you can instantly load something up to YouTube, whereas then you had to go to where the people were, right, Tom? Right. You had to take it like you did, like you said with you and Tim, you went to where you thought you would do well. And you had to go there. You had to get on the road and take it to them. Yeah. As opposed now I can just sit right here and do something on my phone. I don't have to leave this room. And that builds a different kind of character.
There's no substitute for experience. There's no substitute, especially in comedy, to learn to get comedy timing down, that rhythm and all that stuff. There's no substitute. That live performing does that. And that's what it does. By the way, Josh did mention one thing. He mentioned how much you love one another, but he wanted to clarify. He said, not that prison sort of love.
That's why we do this on Zoom. He gets handsy,
Right. I mean, listen, COVID actually was good because Josh can't touch us anymore.
Yeah, well, that's just court ordered. But
So what's it? All right. So you're promoting the book, Still Standing. So talk about what's coming up with you. What's on the agenda for Tom Dreesen here in the future?
No, I'm still going on the road. And in fact, next week I go to Phoenix, Arizona, to perform for a friend of mine, Jerry Colangelo, who grew up not too far from me. Jerry owned the Phoenix Suns and the Arizona Cardinals.
Yep.
And in the end, he was something with the Olympic teams. He's a great guy. He grew up in Chicago Heights, which is a little south of me, where I grew up at. And so we've been friends for many years. I'm going to perform at a black tie affair for him. Then my one-man show, I've got a 90-minute show called The Man Who Made Sinatra Laugh. And it's stand-up comedy, but then I go to a bar and I segue to a bar. And there's a bottle of Jack Daniels on the stage. That's Frank's drink of choice. And I tell a real funny story at the bar, and the audience laughs, and all the lights go out in the theater. And on the screen, Frank Sinatra singing. It's 2:45. There's no one in the place except you and me. It's like he's singing to me. I'm the bartender behind the bar. And, set him up, Joe. I got a little story. And, when he gets to the chorus, make it one for my baby and one more for the road. He goes off screen, and now a spotlight hits me, and I'm in a bar with all these people, and I've come home. And I tell them the first time I heard that voice, I was 10 years old, shining shoes in a bar on the south side of Chicago, and he was on the jukebox. And I take the audience from that little boy hearing Frank Sinatra on the jukebox in the south side of Chicago to one day carrying his coffin out of a church in Beverly Hills, California. So I take him journey, and I take him through the Tim and Tom years and my struggling years, into the Tonight Show and the Sammy Day. I take him through all that with laughs, but I get him to the funeral. And I actually have him in tears, and then I turn right around and I close with a funny monologue and have him back again. And then I toast them with the Jack Daniels and say, I wish for all of you what Frank Sinatra wished for you. The very last song that he ever sang is The Best Is Yet to Come. Good night, everybody. And Frank is singing, The Best Is Yet to Come, as they're leaving the theater. And that's my one-man show. And I'm doing that a lot around the country. And then motivation talks. My the documentary. I got to finish this documentary. We've already filmed Smokey Robinson and Joe Mantegna, and Tim Reed came over and.
That's your agent. He keeps calling. I mean, look at the calls you're getting from this podcast. You're welcome.
You know, it's true. You know, I can't believe I should have shut. Oh, I didn't even shut this thing off. Good thing this thing.
See, we put this out. We put all your numbers out there, so you're welcome.
Yeah, I thought that was shut off, and I can't believe that wasn't shut off. But anyhow,
That's good. That's business. You better have an answering machine attached to that thing because business is coming. Boom.
I got. And I'm doing motivation talks. I'm really busy. Never mistake activity for achievement, but I'm busy. You know.
Good. Is that 90-minute piece coming to Boston that you know of?
You don't know how hard I'm trying. Mike Aruzioni is a good buddy of mine. I don't know if you know Mike.
God, yeah.
Oh yeah.
He's a dear buddy of mine. Lives in Winthrop, and he wants me to come there and do it for his charity. And we've talked about that. And another friend of mine is a general manager of the Colonnade Hotel.
Oh yeah.
He wants me to come there too. His name is David Kalala. He wants me to come there, and so I'm trying to get. I'm trying to get a theater or get some cause to go there for. You know,
that would be great.
I worked Boston with Frank. You know, I worked Boston many years ago, the Boston Playboy Club on my own, and I worked there many times. And then with Frank, we worked at Harbor Lights, big arena Harbor Lights. So I love Boston. I think it's a great little city. Good Italian restaurants. Yeah.
We'd love to see it. Come up here, the North End. We'll bring the podcast down. We'll have you on the show. Let's go.
Yeah, that'd be great.
From your mouth to God's ears. You guys are my agents. Go to work.
I mean, listen, you just went from one guy calling you to 3 guys working for you. Let's do this shit. What was the line? What was it? If you were to work with us for a week and we gave you 50, we'll flip it around. We'll give you the 50. Come work with us. I love that line. That's great.
I've always thought when I started out that a good comedian can make you laugh for an hour. A great comedian can make you laugh and cry. And I only saw 2 comedians do that, Red Skelton and Richard Pryor, where they had the audience laughing, and then they took them to a real dark place and had tears in their eyes, and then they brought them back to laughter again. I said, whoa. When I saw Richard do that one night, I said, that's gutsy. I don't know if I could do that, but I've done that in my one-man show where I take them to another place and then bring them back. It's really a challenge, but it's fun. And that's what we should do, challenge our artistry, challenge our creativity.
Were you there, or did you see part of that Comedy Store documentary when Howie Mandel was talking about Richard Pryor coming out and just came out and just was, he was God. This is the crying part. He just pretended that he was God, and he was basically, cussing people out for, wait, what do you mean? Bring up Martin Luther King. Whoa, what do you mean it happened to Martin Luther King? This one, that one, this one. And he just had people crying, dropped the mic and walked out. Yeah. And he was like, what? Okay, but you're exactly that. You could have me howling and then coming out and literally touching on people that God's coming out going, wait, you've made a huge mess here. Because I'm sure he'd say that about these times today. He'd be like, I left you alone for like a couple of centuries. You just made a mess. Yeah. But that's it. That's
got the Comedy Store crying, and then the next comedian up is like, what the hell?
Yeah, how do you follow that, right?
Well, imagine if you go from that God piece to like Sam Kinison to like, what the hell just happened?
I saw Richard do something different. He was doing a whole set, and then he went into the bicentennial years, and he went into this old man. And he had people laughing so hard, and then all of a sudden he had them in tears. And then he took them to and then he brought them back. Well, I never saw anything like that. I got to tell you a quick, Sam Kinison, one night I was getting, about 3 weeks before he died, I was getting on an airplane, American Airlines, and Sam was getting on the same plane. And he turned around and he said to me, Tom Dreesen, Tom, you know what? You're a comedian and I'm a comedian. He said, you're from Illinois and I'm from Illinois. He said, but you got this terrible reputation of being a clean comedian, and it's ruining your fucking career.
That's awesome.
I said, you got a point there, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah.
He screams in your face and sits down and gets a Jack and Coke. That's awesome. Oh my God.
Guys, I got to run. Believe it or not, there's another show I got to do. It's probably the guy calling me.
Oh, yes. All right. Sorry about it. Well, we really love having you on.
Yeah,
thank
Tom.
you.
This is really fantastic. Your stories, your wisdom and everything, and we really appreciate it. And we hope to see you and bring your show to Boston so we can come and see the performance and then your book is available on Amazon, right? People can go there.
Yeah, or Barnes and Noble has them in stores in a lot of places, but Amazon will get it in 2 days. Yeah.
Tom Dreesen still standing. Go buy it. It's going to be worth it. Thank you, man. Thank you.
Tom, do you have your own podcast at all? Or
there's a guy, in fact, tomorrow wants to talk. They've been asking me for years to do a podcast, and I really don't want to do one. But because I also want to go play golf once in a while.
Wait a second. I'm the sales end of this operation. Would you do it with us?
I'll produce it for you. Go play golf.
All you have to do is talk about stuff.
Yeah, that's what this guy wants to do with me tomorrow. He's talking to me. He said, Tom, he did a very nice podcast with me, but he talked to me about Frank, and then he played a Frank Sinatra song. Talked to me about he played another Frank Sinatra song. Then he talked to me about Smokey, and he played a Smokey Robinson song. He talked to me about Sammy Davis Jr. And I told a story about all of the Gladys Knight and the Pips, all these people that I had performed with, Mac Davis, and then he would play a piece of their music. It was really interesting. So he's the same guy. He wants to produce a podcast with me, but I just want to make people laugh and play some golf.
Okay, then here's what we'll do. We'll make people laugh and we'll play golf at the same time.
Whoa, there you go. Now
are you in?
But
let's end on this note. Just say maybe.
Maybe if there's a couple million in it for me and you guys will do it.
Yeah. I can do that. I'll call some people. We'll work. I heard, hey, Josh, Mike, I heard maybe. I heard maybe from Tom Dreesen on this show right here.
First guest, Clint Eastwood, whoever that is.
Oh, yes.
All right, Tom.
We call the show Larry, Moe, and Curly and Tom.
Yes.
Sure.
Hold on.
As long as I can be. I'd rather be Shemp. I'm a Shemp guy. Okay,
not Curly Joe.
Moe, whichever. I heard maybe. I heard Clint Eastwood. I heard Tim Reed's going to come on, reenact WKRP in Cincinnati. I heard a lot of things in my head, Tom. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Tom.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's just, I really enjoyed this. It's a lot of fun. Well, this is what comedians do. After our shows, what do? We go hang out.
Right.
Doing this for years. Frank Sinatra loved to hang out. He never went to bed till the sun came up his whole life, whether we were on the road or off the road. He liked the show was great, but he liked hanging out afterwards.
Talking, having fun, reminiscing, just talking about what's going on. That's why podcasts are so good. Thank you so much for coming on here.
Tom. We appreciate it, man.
I wish you the best, and we'll talk soon.
Absolutely.